Am I the asshole for bailing on a hike when an unfit person came along? Apologies for the length, but here goes. I'm an avid mountain trail hiker, and have been trying to get some friends to come on one of my favorite hikes. It's an almost 2,000 feet elevation gain, 8 miles round trip, but has a huge payoff in vista at the top. It's a very challenging hike, but this is an athletic group who could handle it. Last Saturday we had the hike planned. I sent everyone a prep list: footwear, sun protection, water, snacks, etc. When everyone showed up at the trailhead, one of the girls had brought along a friend I'd never met, and it was clear she was not going to do well on the hike. She brought nothing: no hat for sun protection, no water, no snacks, was wearing Teva-style sandals, and extremely overweight. The sandals alone were a disqualifier. This is a rocky climb, not a walk through the woods. I tried to be political and said, I don't think this is going to work, and stressed the advanced difficulty of the hike and the importance of proper footwear and hydration. I didn't mention anything about her weight, specifically avoided it in fact, and yet I was immediately accused of fat shaming, and assuming a heavy person can't be physically fit. This hike had disaster written all over it. There was just a 0% chance of it being a pleasant day, so I eventually said that I didn't want to ruin anyone else's day, and I left. I had "you're a dick" on my phone before I was out of the parking lot. This was 9 a.m. At 5:30 p.m., I got a text from one of the guys with a photo of the entire group sitting in an emergency room. Text said, "Dude, this has been a fucking nightmare. I got the story the next day that the out-of-shape girl couldn't hike more than a few hundred yards without needing to stop to rest, had drank all of her friend's water before getting halfway on the trail, and when told, we're almost halfway, sat down and started crying saying she wanted to go back. Long story short, on the downhill she fell and gashed her leg pretty badly and had to be helped to keep walking, resulting in another guy falling and spraining his ankle. Hours later they made it back the cars and everyone went to the to support the two injured people. Now, nearly a week later half of the group has been telling me how right I was, that they all should have known to call it off, but the other half is still calling me a jerk. One said I bailed when they needed me most, so, am I the asshole? I 100% knew this was going to go badly. So knowing that, should I have hung around to help my friends through the inevitable hardship? Or was I right to say, you're on your own with this terrible decision? Edit. I just wanted to clarify that a lot of people are assuming hike means a really long walk. This is a pretty advanced trail, and being unable to finish it is roughly equivalent to swimming out into the ocean until you're too tired to go farther, and then having nothing left to swim back. Being exhausted on this trail basically means a fall is guaranteed because going down is the hard, dangerous part. Not the asshole. Been there, done that. Had to bail on a hike in the Sierra because my partner clearly hadn't trained for it as much as he said he had. A couple of days in we were already a day behind schedule. You were, in fact, there when they needed you most, right at the beginning. They chose not to listen to you. Not the asshole, you literally did everything right. This girl should have known her physical limits and not come on the hike. Good on you for not mentioning her weight because there are people who are experienced and fit hikers who also are overweight. Not the asshole, you didn't fat shame her, plus she wasn't invited, and you are not a babysitter. You behaved responsibly and no one listened to you. I'm surprised the trip, although it sucks, wasn't more of a severe situation. Not the asshole. Rondo chick and the person who brought them as an awe. They put everyone in danger. No water or snacks on an 8-mile mountain hike is just irresponsible. You cannot judge people by weight because honestly you don't really know their limits, but the footwear and lack of preparation are such big red flags. The group was so worried about being nice they endangered everyone. It is ridiculous. Not the asshole. It's almost comical that they're all saying you're right now, but it's a shame your friend sprained his ankle trying to help someone down the trail. I do not understand what that girl, or her friend were thinking when she showed up to an 8-mile hike with sandals on, and no water in hand. Greater than. At 5:30 p.m., I got a text from one of the guys with a photo of the entire group sitting. You had me in the first half and I was ready to say you were a judgmental asshole, but alas. Bonus points for the plot twist. Not the asshole. It is also possible that the unfit woman is also rather innocent in this, and that the friend of hers has underplayed how difficult it is due to malice or stupidity. So yeah. Not the asshole, potential NaH. Greater than one said I bailed when they needed me most. LMAO, you're not the fucking avatar. You're not there to carry the whole group. You pointed out that she wasn't prepared and they chose to ignore you. Not the asshole. You did every single thing you could to inform and prepare your friends for a difficult hike. One of them made a dumb decision to bring someone unfit for it, both in preparedness and ability. They're mad at you for trying to save everyone a world of trouble, and then when they ignored you and you left, the world of trouble happened anyway. Lol, not the asshole. As a physically unfit person, I can barely do a 2-mile round-trip hike. If someone invited me on what you described, I'd at least have the sense to not wear sandals, but TBH, I probably wouldn't go at all. I know my ability. She should have too. Not the asshole. She didn't bring water and wore sandals. It literally doesn't matter what her weight is, or how fit she is, she was not prepared for that hike. Like, sunscreen you can borrow, and maybe she would have been fine without a hat, but the wrong shoes and no water. She's the asshole, and so is the friend who brought her along. I was ready to be like, fat people hike, but not in sandals, they don't. You were right to nope the fuck out of there. Not the asshole. I would have bailed out of that situation pretty quickly too. How did the friend who brought the new person not stress water, snacks, proper footwear, etc.? That's hiking basics 101. Not the asshole. You took everyone's safety seriously, they didn't, and your absence taught them all a valuable lesson. Not the asshole. You were prepared for a day of strenuous hiking, saw that the conditions were no longer favorable, and informed them of this. They deliberately chose not to listen to you. You absolved yourself of responsibility when you told them there was a problem and left. It's their fault for going anyway, and it's Rondo Girl's fault for jumping straight to the fat-shaming card when you specifically avoided it. Not the asshole, and the new girl isn't, either. The friend who brought her is the asshole, big time. Why wouldn't she tell her friend what she needed to bring with her, and why would she just assume her friend could do it? It's clear this girl had never gone hiking before, and she chose not to say anything about the inappropriate footwear choice. Not the asshole. Your friend who invited her should have realized there was going to be a problem, assuming they came together, or at least made sure she had the necessary equipment or supplies, at least. I have a genuine question. Everyone in this thread seems to be accepting a false dichotomy. Here. Was taking it easy simply not an option? Like, after the friend showed up, could not plans have changed a bit? Somebody experienced like op could have taken one look at her and been like, okay, yeah, we are not reaching the summit. Would there really have been no point at all in just accepting that, hiking to wherever the person felt comfortable, and heading back? Full disclosure, I do not hike. The vibe I'm getting here is that, hiking, is not even worth it without a moneshot view at the end. Honestly confused. Not the asshole, but a better title could have been when an unprepared person came along, cause I think that was a much bigger factor. If she was unfit but fully prepared mentally and physically, I think it could have been okay, but it was way more than the fact that she wasn't fit that made her a problem. I know I am a terrible person and you shouldn't wish bad on others and all this good stuff, but reading that she ended up getting minor injury put a smile on my face. Let the downvotes come. I hike. I have also refused to hike with people specifically based on the gear they brought to hike with. I refuse to put myself at risk because someone else isn't taking the dangers of hiking seriously enough. They are the asshole be putting you in that position. So hard not the asshole. I read the title and was just about RDY to give you a you are the asshole, but after reading the post, not the asshole at all. I mean, I personally would have went about it a tad different and just chose a diff path for an easier shorter hike on the spot, but that's because I am not good with conflict. You were not an asshole with the way you handled, you were honest, tactful and just trying to be safe. Not the asshole, you took the most reasonable and responsible action when faced with the unexpected decision to accompany an inexperienced hiker in an advanced trail. Your friends that continued on assumes the risks by moving forward with the hike even after you have subtle hints without fat shaming. I salute you for being cleared-headed and making a great judgment call while being diplomatic with your initial response. Not the asshole. You told the group that it wasn't going to work out and was labeled a fat shamer. She either didn't come prepared enough or wasn't informed on how tough the walk was going to be. Either way, it's not your problem, as you knew it was a disaster waiting to happen and didn't want to deal with it. Not the asshole. I've gotten into hiking a little, but I know my limitations. My girlfriend is an avid hiker and has avid hiker friends. I don't go with them on their more adventurous hikes because I know I would slow them down. Greater than should I have hung around to help my friends through the inevitable hardship? Or was I right to say, you're on your own with this terrible decision? Not the asshole. If a problem is discovered halfway, then any decent person does what is needed to salvage things as best they can. When people are warned about a serious problem and choose to deliberately ignore your concerns, then walking away is the only answer. If you'd went along with their terrible plan, then you'd be endorsing it and enabling their bad decisions. What's next? They decide to go off route or do it after dark. P.S. A fat person can be relatively healthy compared to an idle slim person, but they're never going to be fit. Physics dictates that moving more mass requires far more energy and air and will produce more heat. Taller or muscly people can have some advantages to mitigate the extra demand, but anyone carrying excess fat is literally carrying dead weight. Not the asshole. It's not fun to have to drag someone along, and it's your choice. As long as you warned them, and didn't just flake on them, no fault on your part. Info: did they actually turn back? Or did they insist on trying to finish the hike? Doesn't matter, just morbid curiosity. Not the asshole at all. The asshole's either the sandals girl of the friend who brought her along. It's possible sandals girl was irresponsible and didn't think it was a big deal if she wasn't prepared. It's also possible the friend that brought her said, "Oh, it's just like a walk through the woods," and sandals girl was not properly informed. Not the asshole. Even if this was going to be the gentlest baby's first hike in the world, who hikes without water? That would be a red flag by itself. This really had nothing to do with her weight, but the fact that she was woefully unprepared and putting herself and the group in a dangerous situation doing so. The dual trips to justify that point entirely. Not the asshole. I am a fat athlete. You probably wouldn't know how active I am by looking at me. But I don't show up to a running race without tennis shoes, or a swim without goggles. So, I don't think this was a fat-shaming situation, but a "you clearly aren't prepared" situation. You did the right thing and bailed. Not the asshole. You didn't fat-shame, you were being realistic. You also have no obligation to put yourself in a horrible situation just to be there to help when the inevitable happens. They were reckless for not listening to you. I almost want to take issue with the sandals comment, but there are only two types of people who will show up to a mountain hike in sandals, and there's rarely any doubt which one you're dealing with. The lack of preparedness everywhere else tells you all you need to know. You judged the situation well and tried your best to handle it diplomatically. Not the asshole. Not the asshole, though I was in the fence for a while. Part of your assessment was based on clothing choices like sandals. I'm an avid hiker, and 8 miles in sandals would not be a problem for me. You were right to be concerned about lack of preparation in other areas, though, and it sounds like it was the culmination of those that made you uncomfortable. All that said, at the end of the day, you have to decide for yourself when conditions are not favorable. I'm a diver as well, and have called dives with strangers that have their advanced open water certification, because something didn't feel right. I'm responsible for my safety, so if I'm expected to dive or hike with someone, I need to be comfortable that they aren't going to jeopardize that. If I'm not, hard pass. Not the asshole. You're the type of person I like my husband to hike with. It's not a game, it's a life or death situation if you're not prepared. I think this was the most ethical and responsible action for you to take, and I'm proud of you for sticking to your guns. Not the asshole. You organized and prepped everyone accordingly and removed yourself from a situation you didn't agree to. Not the asshole. The group ignored your very pragmatic safety objections to doing this hike, and having raised your concerns, you were free to leave. You have no obligation to stay around for an unsafe situation, particularly one you tried to help avoid. How anyone could think you were the problem is questionable at best. Not the asshole. You conducted a risk assessment and came back with a red no-go status. You don't take a new hiker with bad shoes on more than a Class 1 hike. This was clearly more advanced than that. The fact that the rest continued on shows that they need a lesson or 12 in risk management. I'd also suggest in the future for hike planning you also specify in advance that bringing anyone else along must be discussed in advance, or you reserve the right to scrap the hike. As for the guy telling you that you bailed when they needed you the most, well, when they needed you the most was to be a risk manager. They ignored that. You being on that hike would have not made the situation any better. In fact, I would bet cash money he would be blaming you for not stressing how bad an idea this was and continuing the hike anyways. Not the asshole. If anyone is going to join in on a hike, they should bring their own supplies and find out about the hike. I've recently got back into hiking, but with the goal of photography mostly. So my 3.5-mile hike took 3 hours and 500 pics later. You being there wouldn't have helped the situation, it would have just been more obvious she was not ready or skilled enough for that hike. Not the asshole, and I really hope the other half of your friend group comes to their senses. You were trying to ensure the safety of everybody in the group. Terrible things can and did happen when you are not prepared adequately for the hike. Why should you have put yourself in a potentially dangerous situation? So you can end up in the with a sprained ankle as well? Who doesn't bring at least water on a hike? Even super light causal ones, we always bring water and a pair of snack bars. 8 miles and no water. NTA. Not the asshole. I love hiking and camping and outdoorsmanship. I am also disabled. I walk with a stick. I sometimes need a wheelchair. When planning hikes, I never do more than a maximum of 5 miles. I tell all participants in advance. I train for a few weeks beforehand as much as I am able, and I make sure I'm fully prepared with hydration and food, blood sugar issues to keep me going. And I never try to come along on hikes too long for me unless everyone is on board with me needing regular rest breaks and help up tougher hills. She showed up with no gear, no training, no water, and no backup plan. What was she expecting? You handled it magnanimously and with tact. She blew things out of proportion, and then proceeded to make life utter hell for everyone else. What a whiner. Not the asshole. I wouldn't want to hike with the half still calling you an asshole for leaving when they needed you most. They don't sound like they fully grasp how dangerous a hike can become if you're not prepared. If one isn't prepared, they will bring down the whole group. Case in point, she drank everyone's water and therefore put everyone else at risk. Not the asshole. I'm in shape and was properly prepared and just did a 1,500 feet elevation gain hike in Yosemite that is considered moderate to strenuous, and it still kicked my ass. People need to understand that hiking can be dangerous if you're not prepared, and you did everything possible to get the group ready. I think the ultimate outcome speaks for itself. Not the asshole. For what it's worth, I'm overweight, and I've done quite a number of hikes like the one you described. But I also didn't start with that kind of mileage and elevation gain, and I would also have refused to do that hike with someone who showed up without the right, previously agreed upon, gear. At the very least, I would have suggested a different hike. These friends were not only assholes to you, they were assholes to her, because it sounds like they kept going long after it should have been clear they needed to turn around. Not the asshole. The fact of the matter is, that it doesn't matter if this person was overweight or not. They were purely just unprepared. Wearing sandals, having no supplies, having no water, would have instantly been a red flag for any person. If you did it based on purely weight, you'd be the a-hole. Not the asshole. Outdoor activities can be dangerous, fun for sure but dangerous. Being unprepared and out of your skill level definitely increases the danger to everyone. One time a group of my friends wanted to go canoeing. We did this all the time. They wanted to go on a part of the river we didn't often do because most of the year it's too shallow. Including this time, I said no way, the river is too low and we'll end up portaging half the length, it'll be miserable. I got called an asshole, lazy, boring, you name it. 6 hours later when they finally got back, 2 had sprained ankles, 3 had bad sunburns, and everyone was miserable and sore for like a week. What would have been a 2-hour trip normally turned into 6 as they had to carry the boats more than half the way. I didn't gloat, but I wanted to. They never did that part of the river again. Not the asshole. They needed you most to tell them she was laughably unprepared and it was stupid risk to take. So you told them. They didn't listen. What do they imagine they needed you to do? Go anyway, so that you could help provide medical care for someone, or several someones, who refuses to acknowledge reality. What was your friend thinking in the first place by inviting her? What were any of them thinking by agreeing to enable obviously risky behavior? If she couldn't walk more than a few hundred feet without a rest, she should have turned around and gone back to the car alone and waited. The person who gave her all their own water was an idiot. That alone should have meant she could not come. WTF. Not the asshole. What the fuck, I'm not even overweight and all, nope, right out of that hike. 8 miles. I know some people are hardcore hikers and scoff at it, but 6 miles is my limit for enjoyment. I did an 8-mile high elevation gain and it sucked all the way through. Never again. Not the asshole. Oh, you wouldn't believe the stories I get off a guy who comes into my work that works in mountain rescue. The stupidity of man-woman knows no bounds. I've seen some overweight people with excellent endurance, however they were also prepared. Hiking without proper footwear and no previous experience is just mental. You're absolutely not the asshole, and your friends basically had a big old dose of karma. They should count themselves lucky that was the worst of the injuries. This isn't going to work. Actual events, this didn't work. Half your friends, this didn't work. The other half, this is your fault somehow. Not the asshole. I, at varying points of my life, have been both the unfit tag-along visitor, as well as one of the fittest in the group. No amount of beautiful vistas can make up for the injuries that you may sustain on a difficult trail if you are not physically prepared for it. I can think of a 11-mile hike I did that I regret to this day because I wasn't physically prepared and I slowed down the entire group. I wish there was a nicer way to say, you aren't ready for this hike, but I think you said it in the best way you could have without being obviously rude. I think your friends could have used your expertise on the disaster hike, but I don't blame you for not going. Either way, it wasn't going to be a fun day for anyone.